Welcome back to Dataverse by Nino Paul, everyone. I am so excited for today. This is episode number 39, and we are jumping right into something that I guarantee is causing some serious headaches out there.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive topic right now.
Yeah, so picture this, right? It is Friday afternoon. You are maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes away from a major check-in meeting with your executives, and you are in the middle of this frantic, sweaty palm hunt for a specific dashboard.
We've all been there. It's the worst feeling.
It really is. You're clicking through endless folders trying to decipher if, like, the chart you need is hiding in a file named Q3 Revenue Final or Q3 Revenue Final V2. And, I mean, by the time you actually locate the data, the meeting is half over, and you haven't even had a second to figure out what the numbers actually mean.
Right. And, it's a totally systemic issue across the corporate world right now. I mean, we are drowning in data, but we are completely starving for clarity. The friction isn't really in collecting the numbers anymore. It's in surfacing the actual insight at the exact moment a decision needs to be made.
Yes, exactly. And that friction is exactly what we are taking apart today. We've gathered this really fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got Salesforce's own 2026 technical documentation, some incredible field notes from a senior Tableau architect, and a really detailed breakdown of these new kind of complex licensing structures.
Yeah, the licensing part it's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. We are looking specifically at the major 2026 updates surrounding Tableau Pulse and Tableau Agent. Because as of July 2026, Tableau is holding a 29% market share for organizations buying a BI tool.
Which is huge.
Right. So that means a massive portion of you listening right now, or the teams you work with, are going to be staring down this very specific naming and budget dilemma really, really soon.
And the funny thing is the foundational misunderstanding that's driving all this confusion actually stems from the documentation itself.
Wait, really? The documentation is causing the problem?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the marketing materials in isolation, Salesforce literally labels both Tableau Pulse and Tableau Agent as an analytics agent. So naturally, a logical reader would look at that and assume these are, two separate competing tools fighting for the exact same budget line.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's just a recipe for a mess. Whenever software marketing uses the same buzzwords for different products, it just breeds total confusion.
Precisely. So the mission for our deep dive today is to completely tear down that pulse versus agent myth. We need to look mechanically at how these two systems actually layer together rather than compete.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how these tools interact, I guess we have to stop looking at them as competitors and start separating them into distinct jobs.
Yeah.
And the best place to start is the foundation, right? Tableau Pulse.
Right, base Tableau Pulse, which, remember, launched back in 2024. And its core function was essentially an early attempt to solve that Friday afternoon dashboard hunt you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
You can really think of base Pulse as your foundational monitoring layer. Mechanically, it operates on a proactive push model rather than a reactive pull model.
Meaning the data comes to you.
Exactly. You define a key performance indicator you care about. Let's use customer churn as the baseline for this example. So you set a specific threshold for that metric. From that exact moment on, Pulse just runs in the background. It continuously evaluates the incoming data against those boundaries you drew.
Right.
And when churn crosses that line, or, if the system's out-of-the-box statistical models detect some weird anomaly in the trend line, Pulse triggers. It pushes a proactive digest directly to the channels you already use, like Slack or your email inbox or your phone.
So it finds the user rather than the user having to remember to log into a portal, remember their password, and run a query.
Exactly. It tells you what happened, and it gives you a quick snapshot. It might break that churn down by a single dimension, maybe just showing you churn by region.
Okay, but that's it, right?
That is it. That is the full extent of base Pulse's capability. It delivers the what with really high reliability, but it completely lacks the capacity to explain the why.
Which is the most important part.
Exactly. An executive sees a notification in Slack that churn just spiked by 4%, and their immediate natural question is to ask, well, what caused it? But Base Pulse has no mechanism to answer that dynamically.
It's just a dead end.
Total analytical dead end. And that gap is exactly what Tableau Agent in Pulse was engineered to close.
Which brings us to the big 2026 architectural update. So Tableau Agent in Pulse, which, by the way, went through a couple of naming iterations, right? I think it was previously known as Enhanced Q&A and then Discover.
Yes, the naming history is a bit of a journey.
Right. But now it is powered by the GPT 5.2 model.
Yeah.
This is the conversational layer. And it's crucial to understand here that it does not replace Pulse. It reasons over the data structures that Pulse is already monitoring.
Exactly. It's an additive layer. So if Pulse triggers an alert that churn spiked, Agent is the module that lets the user literally type back in natural language to interrogate that specific event directly in the chat.
Okay, but it relies on Pulse, right?
Heavily. The reliance on that underlying structure is the absolute most critical technical dependency here. Teams really need to evaluate if they actually have a foundation for the AI to stand on. Because without Pulse's strictly governed metric definitions feeding it, the agent has, well, absolutely nothing reliable to process.
So Pulse is the concrete foundation, and Agent is the house built on top of it.
That's a great way to look at it.
If we pull this out of the software terminology for a second, I kind of see base Pulse operating a lot like a home smoke detector. It just sits up there on the ceiling, monitoring the environment quietly. And the second it detects smoke, it blares an alarm to tell you there is a fire. And that single function is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
But having Tableau Agent enabled, it's like having a veteran fire inspector standing right next to you in the hallway when the alarm goes off. You don't just get the alert. You can literally turn to the inspector and ask, where did the fire start? What materials are burning? Which direction is it spreading?
I love that analogy because the smoke detector provides the alert, but the inspector provides the context. And that transition from a static notification feed to a fully interactive conversational analytics environment, it hinges entirely on that added layer of context.
Yeah.
I mean, the interface shift of typing a question instead of clicking a filter, that's noticeably different for the user. But the much more profound shift is what is actually happening in the back-end processing.
Let's dig into that back-end shift, actually, because we know Agent is the layer on top. But I really want to understand what having that conversational layer actually allows a user to do that the base smoke detector cannot. Like with base Pulse, if I want to dig deeper into an alert, I am limited to tapping preset drill down buttons.
Yes. It's a predefined, totally rigid path that was created by whoever built the dashboard months ago.
Right. But with the Agent, you are exploring via natural language directly in the feed. And reading through the sources, they highlight cross-metric correlation as the real breakthrough here.
It absolutely is, because base Pulse suffers from severe tunnel vision. It monitors, say, customer satisfaction in one silo, and then it monitors delivery delays in a completely separate silo. It physically cannot contextualize them together.
Interesting.
But Tableau Agent breaks down those silos. So if a user asks the agent why support tickets surged on a random Wednesday, the GPT 5.2 model can analyze multiple monitored metrics simultaneously. It might actually generate a plain language narrative pointing out that, hey, the surge in support tickets correlates directly with an unexpected spike in delivery delays from, say, the Chicago warehouse.
Wow.
And it will automatically generate a trend line visualizing that correlation right there in the chat interface.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but I have to push back a little on the mechanics of that correlation. Because generative AI, it doesn't just intuitively understand business operations, right? How does the model mathematically know that a shipping delay logged in some logistics database is connected to a support ticket logged in a completely different customer service platform?
Real.
It isn't just making a blind guess, is it?
Not at all. What's fascinating here is the mechanical bridge that makes that connection possible. It's a concept called shared dimensions.
Shared dimensions, okay.
Yeah. The AI model is completely mathematically incapable of correlating two distinct metrics unless they share a common denominator within the underlying semantic layer.
Ah, okay. So if they don't have that shared dimension, they are basically stranded on two different islands.
Exactly. So if the logistics metric is tagged by, let's say, region, and the support ticket metric is also tagged by region, the AI uses region as the key to join and compare them.
It makes so much sense.
It's the absolute architectural requirement. If one metric is only categorized by product weight and the other is only categorized by customer age tier, with zero overlapping attributes in the data model, the agent just hits a hard wall.
It just fails.
Right. I mean, it can describe the behavior of each metric individually, but it cannot mathematically perform the join to correlate them. The shared dimension is mandatory for cross-metric reasoning.
That implies that the AI is fundamentally constrained by the quality of the data plumbing beneath it, which honestly pivots us directly into the reality of deploying this thing. Because if you just read the promotional materials, a user might assume turning on Tableau Agent is as simple as like flipping a toggle in the settings menu.
Oh, and treating this as a simple software toggle is the absolute most dangerous misconception an organization can make right now. Enabling Tableau Agent in Pulse is a massive data readiness and architectural commitment.
It sounds less like a plug-and-play feature and more like a massive governance problem wearing an AI feature's name, honestly. I mean, if the AI relies so heavily on shared dimensions and structural logic, I am guessing teams can't just unleash this on their existing messy databases. They must have to untangle all their legacy definitions first.
They absolutely do. And unfortunately, it requires doing the unglamorous, often highly political work of metric layer standardization.
Political, how
Well,
so?
think about it. If the term revenue is calculated differently in a North American workbook compared to a European workbook, like perhaps one deducts regional taxes and the other does not, the agent doesn't inherently know which definition is the objective truth.
Oh, man.
Right. So if an executive asks it to summarize global revenue, it will pull clashing numbers, output a very confident but totally flawed answer, and the user's trust in the system will just evaporate immediately.
It is the exact equivalent of asking two different accountants for your net worth and getting entirely different numbers because one accountant decided to include your primary residence and the other didn't. The AI is just regurgitating the structural confusion that already exists in the company.
Exactly. We actually navigated this exact scenario recently with a commercial real estate client at Ninopol.
Oh, really? How did that go?
Well, they were migrating data from several legacy property management systems into a central warehouse, right? And they were highly, highly motivated to deploy Tableau Agent in Pulse for their executive team. But the truly pivotal phase of that entire deployment had absolutely nothing to do with configuring the AI model.
Let me guess. If the issue is usually conflicting definitions, I imagine the hardest part was getting different departments to actually agree on what their core metrics meant before the AI ever touched the data.
You nailed it. It took weeks of intense, sometimes really heated meetings. We had to literally force the leasing department, the accounting team, and the operations team to sit down and agree on a single universal definition for occupancy rate.
Which I'm sure they all saw differently.
Entirely differently. Leasing considered a unit occupied the moment a lease was signed. Accounting didn't consider it occupied until the first rent check cleared the bank. And operations only considered it occupied when the tenant physically actually moved into the building.
Getting rival departments to compromise on a metric definition they've used for a decade that is like negotiating a peace treaty.
It really is. But think about what would happen if they hadn't done that. The agent would have been pulling from three entirely different sets of logic, depending on which table it happened to look at first.
It's absolute chaos.
Right. But by doing that grueling semantic layer sprint first, they standardized the logic. So when they finally enabled the agent, the cross-metric reasoning was rock solid from day one. Organizations that reverse that order, turning the AI loose on a messy, ungoverned foundation, they inevitably end up blaming the AI model for what is, fundamentally, a human data modeling failure.
That makes perfect sense. And that actually brings up another quiet failure mode mentioned in the architect's field notes we reviewed, metadata hygiene. Because even if the math is agreed upon, the way the columns are literally labeled seems to heavily impact the GPT 5.2 model's accuracy.
Oh, yes. Metadata hygiene is the hurdle that gets completely omitted from all the marketing copy. We are talking about the basic naming conventions within the database itself. Things like duplicate fields, vague column headers, and entirely blank CalR descriptions.
Let's look at how that actually breaks the experience for a user, though. Because it's easy to say metadata hygiene, but what does that mean? Say I type in a prompt asking for sales by customer, but the underlying database is just a mess. There's a column named custed, another one called customer number old, and a third labeled client I final, and let's assume none of them have any descriptions attached in the catalog.
Right. In that scenario, the LLM is forced to do what it does best, which is just predict the most statistically probable next token. It doesn't actually know your internal business context, so it guesses.
It just wings it.
Pretty much. If it guesses that customer number old is the relevant field, it will generate this beautifully formatted, highly articulate response that is completely factually incorrect.
And the architect's notes detailed this exact issue on an enterprise rollout. The executive team was complaining that the agent was just hallucinating numbers left and right. And the engineering team, they didn't tweak the AI model. They didn't adjust the temperature settings at all.
No, they didn't have to.
Right. They just went into the semantic layer. They consolidated those three duplicate customer ID fields into one clean column, and they wrote a plain English description in the data catalog explaining exactly what the field represented. And the agent's accuracy issues just vanished overnight. The AI didn't get smarter, the metadata just stopped confusing it.
It just reinforces the reality that generative AI, when applied to business intelligence, is essentially a mirror. It just reflects the current state of an organization's data warehouse. If the warehouse is a mess, the AI will simply deliver that mess to the user faster and with significantly more confidence.
So, okay, let's assume a listener is willing to do the hard work. They run the semantic sprint, their metadata is pristine, and their core metrics share dimensions perfectly. They are structurally ready. We still have to address the hard walls outlined in the sources, because even with a perfect foundation, there are strict technical and financial boundaries that really need to be understood before anyone commits to a rollout. Let's start with the technical constraints, specifically regarding wide, uncurated data sources.
Right, so the GPT 5.2 model is obviously highly capable, but it has a very specific context ceiling when evaluating tabular data. Based on field testing in these 2026 rollouts, the agent consistently hits a wall when a single data source crosses roughly 300 fields with overlapping attributes.
300 fields. Okay, so if a team points the agent at this massive flat table containing like 500 columns of every conceivable data point their company collects, the system just chokes.
It does, and it's important to clarify how it chokes. The model doesn't run out of raw computational power. What happens is the model's attention mechanism gets diluted. With hundreds of overlapping or similarly named fields, the context window just becomes saturated with noise, and the AI begins selecting the incorrect fields to build its queries.
It gets overwhelmed.
Exactly. And the remedy isn't waiting for a more powerful AI model next year. The remedy is actively curating the data source so it only contains the specific fields required for the governed metrics.
Keep the menu small and focused so the chef doesn't grab the wrong ingredients. I like that. There is also a hard limit on the types of questions the agent can handle. The documentation really stresses that it is built for aggregated metrics, not ad hoc transactional queries.
Yes, that is the second major technical boundary. Tableau Agent in Pulse is engineered to reason within defined metric boundaries. So we're talking about things like overall revenue trends, churn rates, or average ticket resolution times.
The big picture stuff.
Right. If a user tries to use the prompt interface to ask, show me every individual line item receipt from the downtown retail store from last Tuesday between noon and 1 o'clock, the system will fail to process it.
It is so similar to asking a smartwatch's fitness tracker to calculate your capital gains taxes. The device isn't broken when it fails to do it. It is just being asked to perform a function it was never designed for. Pulse monitors aggregated trends, not individual transaction logs.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, understanding that distinction is vital for change management. If an IT leader doesn't communicate these boundaries to stakeholders before launch, the inevitable feedback loop will be executives complaining that the AI is broken.
Which is a nightmare.
It is. But if those boundaries are established up front, the dynamic changes entirely. A failed query for transactional data becomes a conversation about needing to build a specific traditional dashboard for that granular task, rather than a failure of the AI system itself.
Setting expectations is just as important as setting the metadata, honestly. Which leads us to the final hard wall here, the licensing reality. Running GPT 5.2 on enterprise data securely that is heavily resource intensive. How does the billing structure actually operate for this following the May 2026 pricing restructure?
So the licensing breakdown reveals a strictly two-tier approach. Base Pulse, the proactive alert system we compared to the smoke detector earlier, that is included in standard Tableau Cloud editions. However, to access the agent, the conversational fire inspector and organization must upgrade.
Okay, so what does that upgrade look like?
The agent is gated behind the Cloud Plus edition, which is a specific contact sales SKU positioned above the standard and enterprise tiers. Alternatively, it is included in the broader Tableau Plus bundle, which also bundles in features like Tableau Next.
Okay, so once an organization actually moves to that premium tier, how are they billed for the usage? Because a huge common anxiety with AI tools right now is unpredictable consumption billing. Where a company pays a few cents every single time an employee submits a prompt or generates a token.
And that's the interesting part. The structure here is actually a total departure from that model. There is no per query or per token metering for Tableau Agent. Organizations are not charged a consumption fee for the questions asked.
Wait, really? But if there is no consumption fee, the cost of running those massive language models has to be absorbed somewhere in the contract.
Oh, it is. The entire cost is baked directly into the tier premium itself, and it represents a very significant financial jump. Analyzing the 2026 pricing models, moving a relatively small deployment of just 10 internal users to the Cloud Plus edition will carry a year-one cost ranging between $15,000 and $40,000.
Wait, for just 10 users.
Just 10 users.
That is a wildly steep entry point.
It is. Furthermore, organizations really need to model the total cost of ownership over a multi-year horizon. Because by year 3, due to standard SaaS renewal uplifts and the expiration of those introductory enterprise discounts, that same 10-user deployment can scale to between $45,000 and $120,000 annually.
Wow.
Yeah, a simple per-seat quote request will not surface that long-term financial impact.
I mean, scaling from 15 grand to potentially over 100 grand in 3 years for a small team, that means this cannot be a casual technology purchase. You can't just throw it on a credit card. It demands a guaranteed return on investment through massive efficiency gains.
Which is exactly why the most responsible path forward for anyone right now is utilizing the Try AI limited trial. It allows teams on qualifying standard cloud editions to actually test the agent's capabilities against their own data models before committing long-term budget to the Cloud Plus tier. It is hands down the safest way to validate if your semantic layer is actually ready.
That is such a critical piece of advice for anyone handling a software budget right now. Seriously, do the trial first. Let's synthesize all this for the listeners. If you are evaluating whether your organization is actually ready to implement this in 2026, we can distill this entire deep dive into a 4-question readiness check.
Okay, let's hear it.
Question 1. Do your core business metrics have single, universally agreed upon definitions across every single department? Question 2. Is your metadata hygiene flawless? Meaning, duplicate fields and blank catalog descriptions have been fully resolved. Question 3, do the disparate metrics you want the AI to correlate actually share common dimensions in the architecture, like region or product line? And question 4, have you modeled a specific multi-year Cloud Plus or Tableau Plus quote, rather than just assuming your current enterprise rates will carry over?
That checklist cuts through the marketing noise entirely. If an organization can confidently answer yes to all 4 of those, enabling Tableau Agent is a brilliant, strategic, high-impact move. But if they hit 2 or more no's on that list, they are not ready to engage sales. They need to put the brakes on and initiate a semantic layer sprint to govern their foundation first.
Because the technology is only ever as strong as the foundation it stands on. Before we wrap up this analysis, what is the underlying takeaway from everything we've looked at today? We have seen the technical requirements, the metadata traps, the pricing realities. What is the hidden dynamic at play here for you?
The dynamic that really stands out to me is the behavioral shift this technology forces. We've established that for Tableau Agent to function at all, a company must finally agree on strict, singular definitions for their core metrics and clean up their architectural hygiene.
Right.
These are tasks that organizations have actively avoided for decades. Because data governance causes intense departmental friction. It requires people to fundamentally change how they work. Which leaves us with, I think, a really provocative thought for everyone to mull over.
Lay it on me.
Is the true value of this 2026 wave of conversational AI actually the brilliant, plain language insights it eventually produces? Or is the actual value the hard, messy, historically avoided conversations it forces human executives to finally have with each other about data governance just to get the system turned on?
Wow. The AI is essentially the bait required to finally get the organization to fix the plumbing. You deploy it, hoping to stop hunting for dashboards, and you realize the tool you actually needed was organizational alignment all along. That is a brilliant, brilliant perspective to close on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. To everyone listening, stay curious, stay well-informed, and seriously evaluate that metadata before you authorize an upgrade. We will catch you on the next one.